What's going on, Angelo family? Welcome to the Angelo podcast. I'm with my boy Jeff here. He's actually one of my classmates from UCLA Anderson, my MBA program, and he's the founder of Leadoff. How you been, bro? Good to see you.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, hell yeah, man. So, what's life been since kind of like the MBA? I know you're back in Palo Alto. You're starting your company. What's it been like right now?
Yeah, it's been a lot. Moving back has been great. Work is just the absolute grind. Starting a company, trying to get some revenue. Just got our product out. Got two co-founders. So it's good. It's up and down, but we're grinding.
Yeah, hell yeah, brother. Well, congrats on the co-founders. Congrats on actually creating a product. Jeff is actually one of my few classmates who started a company out of UCLA Anderson. So a lot of props to him, one of the smartest people you'll ever meet. Amazing kind of sales background as well too, Jeff. So why don't we just kind of dive in? Why don't you tell us about yourself? Where are you from? What got you into tech?
Yeah, so I'm from Palo Alto, California, so the mecca of tech. I've been around it pretty much my whole life. First got exposure. My stepdad's in venture capital, so riding in cars with him, like long road trips to LA, talking about business models and would you use this product? Do you think it makes sense? It's pretty funny. Like on that trip, I think about I've always liked girls, so we were in a car, saw a pretty girl next to me. I'm like, I wish there was a way to figure out who that is and connect.
Yeah.
And a couple of years later, Tinder's booming. I'm like,
No way.
I'm like, I'm too late. I was only 14 at the time, but this might actually be a good space for me. Then I, went to University of San Diego, studied economics, played baseball there, and I think that competitive aspect,
That's awesome, man.
Going from that to the working world, I kind of thought like sales is a good route to be competitive, and my friends have always been like, you're selling everything, like
Yeah.
So I got into sales, was doing it for about 10 years. Was doing it during the MBA program. And then, my capstone project at Anderson was Leadoff. So decided to leave my old company to go full time on it.
Wow, I'm proud of you. And for those of you guys who are curious with Capstone, it's kind of like your end of the year project at UCLA Anderson. So what Jeff did was his end of the year project was the software company Leadoff. And he decided, hey, this is actually a viable product. We can make this a company. Let's see what we can do. So he created Leadoff. So that's pretty cool, man. What was life like at UCLA? What were you envisioning kind of wanting to move up the sales ladder? Or did that kind of spark that entrepreneurial spirit once you got into UCLA?
Yeah, so I knew I always wanted to get into venture capital, and that along with when I was selling during COVID, it was pretty quiet. So I'm like, all right, I got to level up. Like I'm just going to study for the GMAT and go. I looked at doing the UCLA program as a step up to get into venture capital. At the time, I was thinking about like, let me become a manager at user testing and build those management skills during the program to go be the first sales guy at a very early startup, like a Series A or a seed, and just start as the salesperson, build it into, having a team, being a VP of sales, always just kind of chasing that equity. And then, Leadoff came. But I would say that the experience at UCLA, I kind of went in closed-minded, to be honest. I was like, I don't necessarily need the network. Everyone's in entertainment. I'm in tech.
Entertainment.
I have enough friends. I have a Palo Alto network. And I pretty quickly realized like that was the wrong outlook. Made, some of my best friends that I'll ever have in that program. Obviously, Leadoff came out of it. I would say if I had to run it back, I definitely would have gone to more networking events and been more involved. But sales is one of those careers where it's like if things are going well, you're twice as busy. So I was just focused on making money at that point.
At work, I agree, especially because when you're work, the hard thing about Jeff and I, if you guys are curious, like we said in the channel so many times before, we were full time. We're working full time as well as doing an MBA. So we're kind of considered part time MBAs where we graduate within 3 years instead of 2. And a lot of times when you're in the trenches at work, it's hard to focus on school. And then, like we said, being from a LA school, right? You're around entertainment so much. So you meet a lot of people from the big entertainment industries. and not so much in tech, but it seems like Leadoff actually spun off of your capstone project. So why don't we kind of go into your capstone project, right? What made you want to start a company?
Yeah, so it's funny when you start that project. It's like team up in groups of 5. Each person pitches 2 ideas. There's like 120 ideas. You start to narrow down. And what's funny is that class, my idea didn't get voted for. So you choose. I think there's like 10 ideas that get chosen. Mine was 11. And I emailed the professor and I'm like, hey, I'm going to do this regardless, whether it's in class or outside of class.
Yeah.
Like, I have a team formed. Will you let me do it? And he let me do it. So I think that was kind of one thing we don't think about enough, especially if you're not in sales, is like, it doesn't hurt to ask. What's the worst thing? And I think like that question potentially could have changed my life if I don't know if I had the like time to do a capstone project, do enterprise sales, and start a company outside. And so from there, it was like, what is a pain? My stepdad, as a VC, his philosophy is, I invest in people that are solving for some pain that they feel every day.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking about, okay, as a rep, like what's the biggest pain point I've had in the past 10 years? And it's that sales reps rely on managers for coaching, and managers just don't have time. If you think about, like, the ratio is usually 1 manager and 5 to 15 reps.
Yeah.
If you think about how many deals each rep is working, could be 10 per person. So like, that is one person trying to understand and coach on 150 deals.
That's a lot.
Exactly. And so it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And then when I got promoted to being a manager, I knew how important coaching was. And you're just listening to like call recordings for hours a day and it's not helping. So I thought, all right, we need to build something where we are taking the brain of that manager and scaling it across every rep and every deal. So they get that help that they need.
Yeah.
And one of the things people don't talk about enough in sales is, if you are a top rep, which I was fortunate to, be at a good company, a good product, good territory. I was number 1 of 90 the year we IPO.
Wow. Congrats.
Yeah,
man.
thanks. And what it comes back to is like, that was the first time I had real coaching.
Yeah.
And so as the top rep though, you can't go to your manager and say, hey, like, out of the 6 of us, 3 people are maybe going to get fired because they're not hitting their number. I need your attention and I need your coaching.
Yeah.
And so the best reps are overlooked. And that's typically why they leave companies, because they're like, I'm the top rep, but I could be making more money if I was getting the coaching I needed.
Oh, that's so interesting. So while we kind of dive in, you kind of gave us a really great understanding of what made you start Leadoff. So what exactly is Leadoff and what do you guys do?
Yeah. So Leadoff is an AI sales manager. There's really 2 things that we're focused on. And not to get too into the weeds or nerdy about sales, but most tech companies will have a sales methodology.
Yeah.
And what that is like, there's a checklist of items that you need to understand from your prospect. Like, what's their pain? What are they trying to solve for? How are they making a decision? And all the systems out there, like the call recording systems, the note takers, they don't take notes in that format. So you run a call and you go back and look at, the items that they give you about what's talked about. That is not mapped to the items that you need to know to run a deal.
Yeah.
So it's not efficient. So the only way to figure out what's going on in this deal is to go back and listen to a 30-minute call. Reps don't have time for that.
Exactly.
So the first thing we do is essentially make it easy for reps to understand what's going on in that deal so they can more effectively sell on the next call. The second aspect, which I think is really a differentiator, is that, again, with not getting enough coaching, what we do is we use AI. We take the brain of the best coach at that company, the manager, and on every single deal for every single rep, we give recommendations. You should say this. You should ask this. This is the strategy you need to take to progress that deal.
Yeah.
And so thinking about that 1 to 5, 1 to 15 manager to rep ratio, it's now 1 to 1.
No, it's 1-on-1. That is so interesting. And what has it been like for you guys, kind of like just building out this product? Like, how did it kind of start? Did it start at UCLA, and you guys tailored it once you got out?
Yeah, so one of my best friends from home grew up playing baseball together. He also referred me to user testing. He was my sales engineer while I was selling. So like, we did it in baseball. We did it in a company.
That's so cool.
He's a guy that every time I think of a business idea, he's the first person I call.
Yeah.
So when I started that Capstone, and part of that Capstone process was interviewing people. So we interviewed 200 salespeople, whether it was like I've been in sales for a year or I've been in sales for 30 years. Every single person said we have some sort of issue with coaching. So I'm like, all right,
this is the problem.
I'll leave what I'm doing at user testing, like cush job, good salary, to take the bite because that's the validation you need. So brought him on, then was thinking like he's a product guy, was thinking we need a software developer. Luckily enough, played college baseball with a guy.
So cool, man.
Brought him on. Yeah. And so we started thinking about, prototypes, mock-ups, and then when you start thinking about LLMs, AI, it's a little bit newer. We went and hired a contractor and been working with him for 8 months. And those 3 guys have really built it from the ground up.
Wow, that's crazy. Can you talk about kind of like the AI aspect of everything? I know it's kind of a hot buzzword now in the Silicon Valley. What have you kind of been seeing with developing a product with AI?
It's without being like the AI expert, I'll put that preface there. You can create really great fine-tuned models on LLMs to identify information.
Interesting.
So, that back to like the sales methodologies, what we do is we analyze all of your customer interactions and we say, here's the pain that you talked about. Here's how the customer is making a decision. It's really good at identifying that.
Awesome.
Where we are really striving to get more data is those coaching inputs.
Yeah.
So that's really built off of like the framework that I use at user testing. How would I coach on this deal? But you get more granular because each company might have a different coaching recommendation depending on the information of the deal, where you're at. And so there's a lot of like data is king. And that is really where we can become a leader in coaching data if we do it right. And that's a type of data that I don't think any company's doing. And I'll kind of plug our next product rollout because this is what I'm most excited about. And this is kind of like data that companies collect, but they're not databasing it in a way that we're planning on using it. So when you're a sales rep, you might run 30 calls a month with customers. You might send 100 emails. And how do you use that data to make better hiring decisions? So when you think about how sales reps are hired, you look at their resume, you see how they perform during the interview, you call the references, and you have a gut feeling, right? And that works in a lot of cases.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it also doesn't. And if you think about like you hire the wrong enterprise rep, costs the company $1 million between what are you paying them for salary, training, the opportunity cost of not hitting their revenue number, and then having to can them and rehire, right? It's the sad reality. And so what we're trying to do is take all of that data to be able to score reps on different styles. Like, how do they get to their number? Are they progressing deals faster than everyone? How are they progressing deals? A common sales term is a give-get. Like if a prospect says, hey, I need a trial, is the rep asking for something in return? That is a huge difference between a junior rep and a veteran rep, right? Like a veteran rep's going to be like, I need the decision maker on the call. I need to understand what they care about, blah, blah, blah. Then we will do the trial. A junior rep's like, sure, let's just set up a trial. And so, if you think about like developers, product managers, designers, when you go to interview, you have a whole portfolio of your work and you can highlight that. And so we're trying to give sales reps the ability to highlight that. So for companies, which is where the money comes from, but less of where my passion is, for companies, you go look at this person's style and their score, and you say, oh, they match up with one of our top reps, like they would fit in and be able to crush it from day one. For a sales rep, though, which is something I've experienced in my career and all of my friends have, you take a job and it's not the right fit. And that right fit could be because in the interview process, they promised a different territory or they talked about a different sales cycle. And this provides more transparency for sales reps to say, okay, I'm looking at this company. I see the styles, the scores of their top 10 reps. Either I fit in there or I don't. And I can't change this aspect of my style to fit in there. So what you think might be a good role for you and they're promising $400K a year, you're like, well, that's not real.
Exactly.
And I think that's the huge piece for sales reps' careers. And ultimately the root of why I started Leadoff is because sales reps get treated like a number. Right.
About it.
And you get paid to get treated like a number. But at the end of the day, like if you get put in that spin cycle of bad company after bad company because there's no transparency, people look at you and they're like, well, you've been at 4 companies in the last year. Like you're not going to work here. And then you're waiting 6 months to find a decent role.
And you're kind of back in the job market. How are we going to figure it out? That is so interesting. Can you kind of go into what it has it been like being like a B2B software? How have you been helping your initial customers?
So it's really all about, we have a couple of different personas or users. The first is sales reps. And we're, I would say, the only solution on the market that's focused on providing value to sales reps.
That's awesome.
All the other solutions know that the money's coming from the chief revenue officer and enablement. So they build features and try to add value to them. That's great, right? Like they make billions of dollars, whatever. But at the end of the day, the sales reps are the ones who actually bring in revenue.
Oh, fascinating.
And so with the sales reps being our core user group and what we focus on, the first thing that we help them do is automate a lot of these manual tasks that like you have to do your day to day. Like research on a customer before you have your first call with them. That's a 20-minute process per call. We automate that. Preparing for your next call. The systems out there require you to listen to a 30-minute call or look at the notes that you typed up. We take those notes for you. Writing follow-up emails for you, which is kind of like a standard thing now, but also helping with strategy, like giving you that on-demand manager to coach you that already has insight into the deal.
That's fascinating.
Like when you go to a manager to get coaching today, you have to spend 10 to 30 minutes catching your manager up on what's going on in the deal. So you have a 30-minute one-on-one, you're catching them up for 20 minutes. You only have 10 minutes to get coaching. You're working on one deal. But you have 10, 15 deals in your pipeline. So what we try to do is replicate that one-on-one coaching session with AI to do it directly through a platform for you. Then there's managers, which need to understand what's going on in deals to be able to coach and to forecast that deal. To be able to coach, you need to understand the sales methodology information, like what's the pain, who are we talking to, how are they deciding if our solution is right for them. We give them those notes. You skip that 20-minute talking process to go right in and be like, it sounds like you need help with this. That's a 30-second intro to coaching.
That's awesome, actually.
The second piece is with forecasting, like anyone who's in sales that like hears this is going to laugh. You usually have like a weekly forecast or deal review meeting, which is your manager and everyone on your team. Every team's got a third of their reps that don't have real pipeline that will go in and tell you stories about like, oh, this buyer really likes us and I know their dog's name and they said they're really down to buy, and they're just telling these stories that's not concrete. It's not helping anyone. And so the purpose of those deal reviews is to help the manager understand, am I going to put my neck on the line for this deal when I tell my chief revenue officer it's going to close, right? And that, like the other purpose of those deal reviews is for reps to hear, what are my teammates working on? what do these people care about, the buyers? What are the challenges? Like, how do we overcome these hurdles?
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen because you immediately tune out because you know the person's just talking about fluff.
Yeah.
Well, with our system, there can't be fluff. It's here's the methodology information you've talked about. Here are the gaps in your deal. And if there's a gap in your deal, you can't talk about, oh, I did this. Oh, we talked about that, because it's not there.
Exactly.
And so it's a more efficient way for managers to be able to forecast, but it also becomes a better thought leadership meeting where there's no fluff in the conversation. The manager goes directly in and says, oh, you're forecasting this deal, but we don't know who's going to sign the contract. That's an issue.
Exactly.
Now let's actually refocus to how do you go find that buyer, and everyone can learn from that.
Wow, that's crazy. So it seems like you guys have a very well-established product. It seems like the training is kind of on point, and I'm very excited to see you guys scale to the market. Earlier, we were talking about what it was like kind of becoming an entrepreneur, right? What has it been like for you raising capital and starting the company? Can you kind of give advice to those entrepreneurs who want to start and take your journey?
Yeah, I would say, I think I'm lucky that I did sales, because it's one of those careers where it's so up and down.
Yeah.
And if you are a true salesperson, you're wired to not really like celebrate the wins. You just try to stay even keel, because you close a deal and then the next day a deal slips and you miss your number. Like you can't get too high or too low. I mean, personally, one thing I'm working on is appreciating the little things a bit more. And this has been a good reminder of that. But I think getting started, like you got to know that you're going to grind and you're going to have the hardest days of your life so far. But what I think people don't talk about enough, or what I didn't hear about enough, is like, they're your days. You chose this. Like, you have the hardest days, and you'll work 14 hours like today, and you get off work and you're like, I actually did a lot of stuff. And
I'm proud of myself.
And some things were hard, some things were fun, and like tomorrow just run it back. So I think it's like, you got to prepare for the mental roller coaster, especially if you're not in sales, that might be new. But when you're in it, you don't really realize the ups and downs. You're just like, I got to get this done. I would say the time management and accountability piece is something that I'm learning. Like time management, doing, MBA, working full time, and trying to get this company started really helped. But you have 100 things you need to get done in a day, and you need to be very strict about like, here's the 30 minutes to do this. If I don't get it done, I need to move on to the next thing and come back. So one thing I do with my co-founder is every morning at 8:30, we have a check-in meeting, and I have a list of items of things I need to get done that day. And we look at it the next day.
Did we accomplish?
Exactly. And he doesn't need that. I do. Which, you probably shouldn't admit as an entrepreneur, but that's how it is. Like, I need him to be like, you did not do that yesterday. Like, what happened? And that starts to beat into my mind of like, now I know, like, I should have switched to the next thing, or I should have come back. The raising money aspect was very interesting. I think, again, like fortunate that I'm in sales, because you're going to get rejected way more than you're going to, like, I'm just used to it. Like, if I get a no, and this is like a thing in sales, like a no's better than no answer.
Exactly.
You get a no, you ask for feedback, you move on. So early on, we were kind of thinking like, well, if we raised $1 million, a VC firm, one firm could write a check for $1 million. If we get the right one, like, we're done with our round. We went to angel networks. We did like pitch. I mean, they put you through the spin cycle. 5-minute pitch for this panel, then 5-minute pitch for this panel.
Wow.
It's like, you can't talk about anything in 5 minutes. Like, and then the requirements are like, one of the slides is, what's your exit strategy? It's like, dude, we don't even have a product. Like, what, like, so that was good practice. And we got a lot of feedback from angel networks and VC firms that are like, you're too early stage for us. You need to just go generate revenue. And I started to think to myself, like, how do companies get started if everyone requires revenue? Like, does everyone just take no salary and grind it out for a couple of months? And then we decided, like, let's go friends and family route.
Smart.
And that was actually, it worked out really well. We raised a good round. We raised $400K in about 2 months. Like,
that's insane.
The goal was 200.
Yeah, you got that.
And I love, like, I'm so goal focused that, I told my co-founder, like, give me a number, like, tell me, and he was still working full time, like, getting paid.
Yeah.
And he was like, if we raise 100K in a month, like, I'll come full time.
Wow.
I'll put in my notice. I'll be there next month. And I needed that challenge. And you kind of got to work backwards, right? Like, well, how many meetings do I need to set per week? Like, what conversion rate do I need?
That's very good metrics driven with this.
Yeah, you have. I mean, that's just the sales piece, right? Like, how many leads do you get in? What do you convert?
Yeah.
And so that was really kind of the start, and we got to 200 in a month. So I'm like, I'm gonna bring you on, and you're taking half the salary we talked about, because I beat my goal. But I think the coolest thing about that is, it's weird going to your friends and asking for money.
Yeah, can you talk about that? Because we have a buddy named Ben. He's starting his own company as well. He raised
another Palo Alto guy.
Another Palo Alto. These Palo Alto UCLA guys, they're born different, So yeah, what was that like, raising money from friends and family? How do you kind of structure that deal for our beginning entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I'll start with how you approach it, and then I'll go into structuring the deal. So, I have a very relaxed approach until it gets down to that last, like, let's close this deal. So what I did was we created a pitch deck. I sent it out to a lot of people that I'm close with, and I said, look, like, we started this company, we're raising money, like, absolutely no pressure. Like, even if you don't respond, I'm not going to be hurt. But if you have any interest, let's hop on a call.
Okay.
And what was nice about that is, if they're true homies, they're either going to say, like, now's not the right time or whatnot. But if they take that call, they're in. So you think about, like, my conversion rate of call to close was 95, 100%, because your friends aren't going to be like, oh, let's hop on a call, let me waste your time, and I'm not going to invest anyways. They're hopping on to understand how the investment terms work, ask a couple of questions, and just make sure that, like, I'm thinking about it the right way.
Exactly.
So that was a really cool process, and I think the hardest part about it was truly telling people, like, I will not view you any differently if you say no.
Yeah.
Like, I get
all
it.
the transparency there.
And it's hard, like, it's hard to tell people that. It doesn't seem like a hard thing, but when you're talking to people that you grew up with, and it's like people talk about, like, money and family and business, it's like, don't get in business with your family. Exactly. It's the same thing. And it's just like, there are no hard feelings. This is my job. I have to go to everyone I know and ask for it.
Yeah.
The terms, so, it's called a safe note, and it's become very standard for companies when they raise their first round. And what it means is, you're basically getting a loan, and that loan turns into equity when you raise your next round. And that next round is typically what's called a priced round, where an institution like a VC firm will give you money and they will take equity. So you're getting money and saying, well, depending on, it's called a value cap, which means, like, if our valuation is higher, they basically get, like, a higher proportion of equity than that next round. So you're basically capping them out in a good way, saying, like, you get better terms up to this amount when we might be worth more.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I'm pretty sure Y Combinator started, and it's just become super common. And the reason why it happens is because at that first round, you don't typically have revenue, so you can't have a valuation.
Exactly.
But when you get that price round, you have revenue, you can have a valuation.
That's fascinating. And then can you tell these entrepreneurs who are going to start, what do you do with that capital that you raised from friends and family? Are you reinvesting into the product, hiring new staff, scaling the company?
Yeah, I think every company is different. Like, I don't know if we're doing it the right way or the standard way. Ours is, my view is if we get the right people in, we can make anything happen.
I believe that.
And so we invested in, bringing on my co-founder. My other co-founder is going to start in a month. We hired a lead data engineer. Like, data science was the one thing we were lacking. And all of the money is going towards salaries that are essentially building the product right now. A couple software systems to help build the product, to run the company. But 90% of our capital is deployed on people to build.
I love it. And you mentioned before that once you kind of go to that Series A, Series B, Series C from venture capital, you need to see revenue. So what kind of revenue are most venture capitalists looking for before actually handing you a check for a certain seed round or series?
I would say there's no right answer. Like, you basically, and this is from only my knowledge doing this, like, you have to have revenue for your seed round. So we would call our round a pre-seed.
Yeah.
You got to have revenue for a seed. Doesn't matter what revenue you have, that just changes your valuation. So if we're, barely scraping by, our valuation's probably going to be 1/10 of if we're crushing it in the next 6 months.
That's interesting. Yeah. And I know you're going to do super well. I feel like you have a great team. You have the sales experience, right? So you have the ability to actually generate revenue, sell the product, which is interesting because most companies are able to have a great product, but they don't know how to sell it, they don't know how to market it, which you do have. And it seems like you have a lot of great founders kind of focused on building an amazing product. So I'm really excited to see how much you scale. And let alone raising $400,000 in 2 months is pretty crazy. I'm very proud of you for that.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Of course. I want to kind of go back into like the whole MBA thing, right? You got your MBA from UCLA. A lot of times people think that they need to go into a top business school to start a company. What are your thoughts on business school? Should people go full-time, part-time? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so this is a funny one. I got a good story about
Yeah, go ahead.
But, when I was thinking about getting my MBA, this is probably too much, but 11/11, you make a wish.
Right? Yeah.
So I'm from Palo Alto, and I went to high school across the street from Stanford. And
around the greats.
For years, my 11/11 wish was to get my MBA from Stanford, which is crazy.
As a GSB?
Yep.
Yeah.
And when I started applying, what stemmed that was sales were slow. I'm going to, study for the GMAT. And I wanted to go to Stanford or Harvard, and it was legitimately an ego thing, like just to prove that like I could get into a top school.
Yeah.
And then sales started picking up at user testing, and I was like, you know what? I've got a great track to move up. I got a great track to make a lot of money, but most importantly, I had the track to do something and put something on my resume that could change my career.
Exactly.
And so I put that pressure on myself. And like, I didn't think I was going to be one of 90 when we IPO'd, but like, it was the heyday, man. Like,
proud of you. I'm proud of you. Dude.
It was great. Like and like not in a cocky way, but like I got coached to be able to any real deal that I touched, I pretty much closed.
Yeah.
But I was working twice as hard as I was before.
Yeah.
Because once it starts pouring on and you're in accelerators, meaning like you hit your quota, you start getting more money on each deal. I was like, well, I just bought a house and like
in LA,
curtains and all that cost 20 grand. Like you just gotta not care and put in the work. But so then, like, taking a step back, I was thinking, okay, well, I don't know if I could leave all of this. The money was the first thing, but knowing that I could put something on my resume that I could get a lot of sales jobs with was the driver to go part-time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to stay in California. Part-time options were, Berkeley, USC, UCLA. I didn't apply to Berkeley because I didn't want to be in the Bay. Between USC, UCLA, like UCLA was actually my dream school growing up.
Really?
Oh,
yeah. That's a lot of engineering schools, to be honest. There's good sports, good academics.
Everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I visited in high school, didn't get in. One of my best friends played football and baseball there.
Oh,
like,
wow.
That was just the mecca of California.
Yeah,
You're just being at UCLA, like in college, seemed like the coolest thing.
Yep, out in Westwood.
Didn't get in, had the chip on my shoulder, went and visited my boy all the time. He was, in the sports house, like just
yeah, that's how it was like a time, man. Yeah.
And so I decided, like, I even had, my chief revenue officer, my manager, they wrote me letters of rec for Harvard and Stanford.
At user testing.
I had a family friend, her mom is on the board at GSB. I talked to her. She introduced me to another person that went there. Like, I was gunning for it.
Yeah.
And I decided I'm not going to, like, sacrifice my job right now for that. Thinking more short term. It's worked out so far.
Yeah.
But I told my mom, like, I'm going to go to UCLA. And she was like, why not Stanford or Harvard? And she just sets that bar of, like, if you're going to do something, you need to get that top recognition.
Yeah.
I was like, Mom, but you don't understand. Like, I would be leaving my career right now. And to be honest, man, like, for starting a software company, GSB and like Harvard is pretty goated, pretty goated for that.
Yeah.
But I don't regret the decision I made at all.
Yeah. See, some people underestimate what it's like being like a top employee at a startup that IPOs, right? Because that's a lot of dreams for these companies within Stanford, within like people like going to Y Combinator. They want to IPO, but you already were in there, one of the first employees at user testing. So I respect you for going to UCLA, kind of building your career out there, and then you met so many of your good friends out there who actually, that's where the whole genesis of your company is now at UCLA because of our capstone project. So
yeah,
a lot of respect for you for doing that, man.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. With regards to kind of like, I want to like just kind of go into like what would you give back to like the younger generation, right? So I want you to think back to like yourself and like what advice would you have given yourself, kind of like the younger version of you?
Yeah. First thing is like get out of the day-to-day weeds and think longer term. And I'm sure this is probably for all careers, but I don't have that experience. But in sales, it's like you're just trying to survive. You're just trying to make it to the next day. And one thing I did early on in my career was jump from job to job. Like, the grass is always greener.
Yeah.
I don't like this product. That product's cooler. Like, this company's in the Bay. And at first, I think that kind of stunted my career trajectory because you're 23, 24, you go interview with a company and they're like, you've already been at 3 companies. Like, that's suspect.
Especially in this area.
And I will say, like, the first couple of companies, it was probably a good move what I did.
Yeah.
But when you're young and you're just trying to figure out the work world, you still gotta have that longer term vision, and you don't know how the pieces are gonna fall, nor can you plan on that. But you should think about, like, what do I even want to do in 3 years? Where do I want to be? That's one thing. I would say, like, having a good understanding of where your line is. So in my first sales job, culture could have been better, no coaching. I got great experience. So I was the first sales rep there. It was like a 13-person company.
No way.
I got to help with marketing. I got to do sales. It was like we went from, it was like an event networking app, and we were selling like, hey, you have one event, use our app.
Yeah.
What I got to do is go build contracts and go sell to, you're an event company. We're getting really 12 of your events this year.
Yeah.
I got to interview, hire, manage, and did all that in like 9 months. So I got
too.
Yeah. I don't even know which way's up, but I'm just, but I'm like, this is cool. Like, I'm interviewing, I'm managing, like, this is dope.
Yeah.
But I think with that, like, kind of knowing your line, meaning from that job, I then went to a 2-person startup. I'm super passionate about cars. It was like a house for cars. So people do aftermarket customization. They go on that site, they tag the parts, they tag the shop that did it. I was making 100 cold calls a day into these car shops.
Yeah.
They're not answering their phone. They don't care about what you have to say. Like, they just don't have time. And so I was so down on sales that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to actually go do digital marketing.
Yeah.
I took like a HubSpot certification.
You did the HubSpot thing? Yeah.
And I was going to go do marketing. And then I got back to the Bay and I was like, you know what? I should give sales another try.
Yeah.
And it was all history from there. But I think that was one of those things where, like, I probably could have made a bad choice.
Yeah.
Because I was so burnt out, because I wasn't thinking long term, and I didn't know how to analyze what's important for me in my career. Was it money? Was it the company? Was it location? And actually, one of my best girlfriends, she out of college did sales with me at my next job. One of the top salespeople,
Really?
like, shark. She could crush it in any company doing any sales.
Yeah.
And she was like, I don't like this. I don't get managed, like, coaching, whatever, and is now doing marketing. And I always tell her, like, the day I hire a sales rep, like, you better learn how to do B2B sales, because I'm pulling you out of marketing.
That's fascinating. No way. So that's crazy. I'm glad you have so much experience kind of with sales, with giving advice, actually, to see all these things you've kind of learned in your career. We're kind of coming towards the end of the podcast, but I want our audience to kind of get to know you a little bit better. So you mentioned your love for cars. Can you give us your top 3 favorite cars?
Oh. All right. I'd have to go Mercedes Gullwing as a classic.
Talk about it.
Yeah. I mean, the Gullwing doors, you got to go silver, red interior.
Ooh.
Just a classic.
Yeah.
And
you got Mercedes. If you guys are curious, he has a Mercedes outside.
Yeah. Just got it. It's nice.
Just wrapped it too. It looks great.
I'm excited about it. I'd have to go Aston Martin DBS Superleggera.
No way.
Big grill, mean, fast. Astons are classy.
Yeah.
My dad collects Astons. I've always been obsessed with them.
That's great. I actually been getting Astons too ever since Roddy Ricch, Aston Martin. Chuck, hear that song?
Yeah.
I actually listened to that on the way to car week.
And Rick Ross, Aston Martin music.
Yeah. Oh, with Drake back in the day. Yeah. That's a banger.
Third one. That's a tough one. I'm probably gonna go with the new Ford GT.
Dude, did you see Shmi with his GT?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that? We were at Car Week together. Everyone was curious at Exotics on Broadway, and we saw Shmi. His car was a Ford GT. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, I don't care what color combination it is, what the specs are, as long as it's not the yellow they do with the black lines, stripes.
Yeah.
I'm taking it all day long, no matter what color combo it is.
That's crazy. I wanted to ask your thoughts, because we were actually at Exotics on Broadway. What were your thoughts on the Bugattis, and the Cohen you saw?
They're impressive cars. Bugattis look different, but I think at a certain level, I don't study them anymore, because to me those hypercars kind of all look the same.
Similar,
and so I'm in one of those phases, until I got the money for that, I'm not even gonna look at it, because I don't want to be able to tell the difference, because they all kind of look similar. That's why I like the Ford GT, because it is different.
I could totally see you driving that GT.
Maybe one day.
Yeah.
Hopefully we get lead off in a good spot.
Yeah, man. Well, I'm excited one day you're gonna have that garage, and then we're gonna have a video in your garage interviewing you after the whole after lead off. So that's our next video, guys. We're foreshadowing that.
Yeah.
We'll do it. Of course. Well, Jeff, man, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been hella fun. I'm very excited to see where this goes. But can you tell our audience where they can reach you? We're gonna have all his links below. So where can they reach you?
Yeah. LinkedIn, Jeff Cohen. Email, jeff@leadoff.ai. Instagram, JeffEC1. But yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate you all for listening to me spit here. Let's go.
Yeah, my boy dropped some dimes, so we're feel free to reach out to them. All the links are down below. Jeff, thank you guys thanks again so much. Angelo family, thank you guys for watching this episode. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Jeff links are down below. Companies who do want to reach out to Jeff, take a look down below as well. Very excited to see where Leadoff goes, and congratulations again, my friend. Very proud of you.
Appreciate it. Thanks, y'all.
Peace.